Daniel Brooks had spent 15 years repairing cars that everyone else had given up on. His garage wasn't impressive. The roof leaked whenever it rained. Most of his tools were older than his daughter, Emma. Customers often joked, "If Daniel can fix it, it probably wasn't broken." The nickname spread throughout town. The junk mechanic. Daniel never argued. He simply smiled and kept working. Emma hated hearing people laugh at her father. "Dad, why don't you tell them how many impossible cars you've repaired?" Daniel tightened a bolt and smiled. Because good work speaks louder than words. One Monday morning, business was painfully slow. Only one rusted pickup truck sat outside the garage. Emma sighed. "I wish more people trusted you." Daniel looked at the nearly empty workshop. "They will. Eventually." Just then, 3 black SUVs slowly pulled into the driveway. Everyone in town noticed. Men and women wearing dark blue jackets stepped out. Their jackets carried a small embroidered patch. NASA. Emma blinked twice. "Dad. Is that real?" Daniel looked up from beneath the hood of an old Mustang. "I think it is." The team leader approached. "Mr. Daniel Brooks." Daniel wiped the grease from his hands. "That's me." The woman extended her hand. "My name is Dr. Sarah Collins. We've traveled over 1,000 miles to meet you." Neighbors immediately gathered outside the garage. Someone whispered, "What would NASA want with a junk mechanic?" Another laughed. "They must be lost." Dr. Collins smiled politely. "We're not lost. We came here for him." The crowd instantly became silent. Behind the SUVs sat a covered trailer. Inside was a strange electric prototype vehicle covered by a gray protective sheet. Dr. Collins looked at Daniel. "For 8 months. Our engineers have been chasing a problem we cannot solve. We've replaced computers, motors, batteries, control systems. Nothing worked." Daniel looked at the trailer. "What makes you think I can help?" Dr. Collins smiled. "Because every engineer we've spoken to recommended replacing parts. But every mechanic who knows you said you always search for the real cause." Emma looked proudly at her father. The neighbors who had mocked him moments earlier stood speechless. Daniel slowly walked toward the covered prototype. He placed one hand on the vehicle. Then quietly smiled. "I won't promise I can fix it. But I promise. I won't stop looking until I understand why it's broken." Dr. Collins nodded. "That's exactly why we came." Just then, the prototype suddenly emitted a loud warning alarm. Its dashboard lit up bright red. One NASA engineer looked worried. It just locked itself down again. Daniel looked through the windshield for only a few seconds. Then he quietly said, "I think you're all looking in the wrong place." The NASA team stared at him in disbelief. Daniel's words left the NASA engineers completely silent. "I think you're all looking in the wrong place." Dr. Sarah Collins folded her arms. "What do you mean?" Daniel walked slowly around the prototype. He didn't touch a single tool. Instead, he asked one question. "When does it fail?" A senior engineer answered. "Only after 20 to 30 minutes of operation." Daniel nodded. "So the problem appears after something changes." The engineer looked confused. "We've already replaced the battery pack, the motors, the cooling system, the control computers." Daniel smiled. "Exactly. You replaced everything. But did anyone ask what changes after 30 minutes? The workshop fell silent. Daniel asked them to start the prototype. The electric motors hummed quietly. Everything looked normal. He didn't open the battery compartment. He didn't connect a diagnostic computer. Instead, he placed his hand near one of the cooling vents. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 15. Emma watched patiently. The NASA engineers exchanged nervous glances. Then, the prototype suddenly shut down. Red warning lights flashed across the dashboard. One engineer sighed. There it is. The same failure. Daniel smiled. I was expecting that. He crouched beside the rear cooling duct. A tiny piece of foam insulation had shifted out of place. It partially blocked the temperature sensor whenever warm air expanded inside the duct. Daniel carefully removed the foam. He looked at Dr. Collins. Start it again. The engineers hesitated. We've done this hundreds of times.
Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Enjoy the video.
Daniel smiled. One more. The prototype started. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. 40. No warning lights. No shutdown. The control screens remained green. One engineer whispered. Impossible. Dr. Collins checked the live data. The temperature readings are perfectly stable. Daniel nodded. The sensor wasn't faulty. It was reading the wrong airflow. The workshop erupted in applause. One young NASA engineer laughed. We spent 8 months replacing million-dollar equipment. Because of a piece of foam worth less than $1. Daniel smiled. Sometimes expensive problems have inexpensive causes. Emma couldn't stop smiling. I knew Dad would figure it out. Dr. Collins walked toward Daniel. Mr. Brooks. You didn't just fix our prototype. You've saved our project. She handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was an official invitation. Daniel read it quietly. His eyes widened. What is it, Dad? Emma asked. Daniel smiled. They're inviting us to NASA's main research center. Dr. Collins nodded. We have something even more important that we'd like you to see. The engineers looked at each other nervously. One of them quietly said, if he solves that project too, it could change everything. Daniel carefully folded the invitation and looked at Emma. What do you think? Emma grinned. I think we should go. 2 days later, they arrived at NASA's main research center. The massive facility was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Glass laboratories. Advanced testing chambers. Engineers working around the clock. As Daniel entered, several scientists stopped what they were doing. Some whispered. That's him. The mechanic from the small garage. Another engineer smiled. The one who fixed the prototype. Dr. Sarah Collins led Daniel into a highly restricted laboratory. In the center of the room stood a large metal platform covered by a white sheet. She slowly pulled it away. Underneath was a futuristic electric power system unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. This, she said, is the reason we invited you. Daniel walked around it silently. What does it do? Dr. Collins replied. It's a high-efficiency power management system designed for future space missions. We've spent 3 years developing it. But one mysterious fault keeps shutting it down. A senior engineer added. If we can't solve it within 2 weeks, the entire project could be cancelled. Daniel nodded. I'll need to see it operating. The engineers activated the system. At first, everything looked perfect. Power flowed smoothly. Every monitor showed green. Then, without warning, the entire system shut down. The room went dark for a moment before emergency lights came on. One frustrated engineer slammed his notebook shut. It happens every single time. Daniel remained calm. Instead of looking at the computer screens, he walked to the back of the testing platform. He noticed a faint clicking sound that repeated every few seconds. He smiled slightly. Dr. Collins noticed. "You heard something?" Daniel nodded. "I did." "What was it?" she asked. Daniel looked at the engineers. "I don't think your biggest problem is electrical." The room fell silent. A senior engineer frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel pointed toward a small vibration isolation mount beneath the platform. "It's moving more than it should. If I'm right, the shutdown isn't caused by the power system. It's being triggered by vibration." Several engineers immediately checked the sensors. One of them suddenly shouted, "He's right." The vibration readings spiked just before every shutdown. The room erupted into excitement. Dr. Collins looked at Daniel in amazement. "You found in 10 minutes what we've missed for 3 years." But before anyone could celebrate, an alarm echoed throughout the research center. A technician ran into the lab. "Dr. Collins, the main simulation chamber has failed. And it's affecting every connected system." Dr. Collins turned toward Daniel. "We need your help." The fate of the entire project now depended on him. The alarm echoed through every hallway of the research center. Red emergency lights began flashing. Engineers rushed in every direction. One technician shouted, "The simulation chamber is offline. If we don't restore it in the next 10 minutes, today's mission test will be cancelled." Dr. Sarah Collins turned to Daniel. "We've never had a failure like this." Daniel remained calm. "Take me there." The massive simulation chamber looked like something from a science fiction movie. Hundreds of monitors surrounded a giant testing platform. Dozens of engineers were typing frantically. The chief systems engineer pointed at the screens. "Every subsystem is reporting different errors. The computers think everything is failing." Daniel studied the monitors for a few seconds. Then, he looked away from the screens completely. Instead, he stared at the ceiling. Emma noticed. "Dad, what are you looking at?" "The air vents," Daniel replied. Everyone looked confused. Daniel walked beneath one of the large ventilation ducts. He closed his eyes. Then he smiled. "Can someone switch off the ventilation for 30 seconds? The chief engineer frowned. "What does the air conditioning have to do with the simulation?" Daniel answered. "I don't know yet. But I want to find out." Dr. Collins nodded. "Do it." The ventilation system shut down. Within seconds, the warning alarms stopped. Every engineer froze. One by one, the red warning lights disappeared. The chief engineer stared at the screen. "The system is stabilizing." Daniel pointed toward a damaged vibration sensor mounted inside the ventilation duct. The airflow was creating tiny vibrations. Those vibrations were interfering with an extremely sensitive sensor. The computer believed the test platform was unstable. A young engineer whispered, "We spent days rewriting software. When the problem was in the building." Daniel smiled. "Sometimes the environment causes the failure, not the machine." The room erupted into applause. Dr. Collins shook Daniel's hand. "You've saved another project. But I have one final question." She led Daniel into a conference room where several senior NASA officials were waiting. One official smiled. "Mr. Brooks, we'd like you to join our engineering team." The salary was extraordinary. The benefits were unmatched. Emma looked proudly at her father. But Daniel quietly slid the offer back across the table. "I'm honored. But my garage still has customers waiting." The room fell silent. One official asked, "You turned down this opportunity?" Daniel smiled. "My dream has never been to work in the biggest building. My dream is to help ordinary people solve extraordinary problems." The officials exchanged smiles. Dr. Collins nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. She placed a small presentation box in front of Daniel. Inside was a gold medal engraved with the words, "For exceptional problem solving and humility." As Daniel held the medal, a security officer entered the room. Dr. Collins. We've just received an urgent call. It's from an international space agency. They're asking for Mr. Brooks by name. The entire room looked at Daniel. His next challenge was about to become even bigger. Daniel looked at the NASA medal for a moment. Then he carefully placed it back in the presentation box. I'll treasure this. Dr. Sarah Collins smiled. You've earned it. Just then, the conference room doors opened. A representative from an international space agency hurried inside. He introduced himself. My name is Dr. Adrian Foster. We've come because of what you accomplished here. Daniel shook his hand. How can I help? Dr. Foster placed a rugged metal case on the table. Inside was a compact electronic control module. It belongs to a robotic exploration vehicle. We're preparing a mission that has been delayed twice. The vehicle passes every ground test. But after several hours of operation, it shuts itself down. Emma smiled. That sounds familiar. Daniel laughed softly. It usually does. The group moved to another testing facility. The robotic vehicle sat inside a giant simulation chamber. Its wheels slowly rolled across an artificial rocky surface. Everything appeared normal. Dr. Foster explained. We've replaced the batteries, the motors, the processors, even the software. Nothing has worked. Daniel listened carefully. Then he asked, what hasn't been replaced? The room became quiet. One engineer answered. I don't think anyone asked that. Daniel nodded. Let's start there. Instead of connecting diagnostic equipment, Daniel watched the robot move. For nearly 20 minutes, he said nothing. Then he noticed a tiny cable vibrating against a metal bracket. Every time the robot crossed rough terrain, the cable shifted slightly. Daniel stopped the test. He gently lifted the cable. Beneath it, the protective insulation had worn away. A tiny section of wire occasionally touched the bracket. Only for a fraction of a second. But it was enough to trigger the emergency shutdown. Daniel smiled. I think we found it. One engineer immediately repaired the damaged section. The robot was restarted. This time, it completed the entire 6-hour simulation without a single fault. The control room exploded with applause. Dr. Foster couldn't believe it. We've spent over a year searching for that. Daniel shrugged. I wasn't looking for a complicated answer. I was looking for the first thing that didn't seem normal. Later that afternoon, Dr. Foster approached Daniel. Mr. Brooks. Our organization would like to name you as an honorary engineering advisor. Daniel smiled. I appreciate the honor. But I already have a full-time job. Dr. Foster looked puzzled. You own a garage. Daniel nodded. And every customer who walks through that door trusts me with something important. I don't want to lose that. Dr. Foster smiled. Then perhaps we'll bring our problems to your garage instead. Everyone laughed. Just then, Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Dad. You're everywhere. Videos of Daniel solving complex engineering problems had spread across the internet. Millions of people were watching. But among the thousands of supportive comments, one message stood out. It came from the CEO of the world's largest automotive technology company. It read, Mr. Brooks, I believe you've just solved a problem we've been hiding for 5 years. We need to meet immediately. Emma looked at her father and smiled. I think your little garage is about to get another visitor. Daniel looked at the message on Emma's phone. He smiled. I guess the garage is going to be busy again. Emma laughed. It always is. 1 week later. A convoy of black SUVs pulled into Daniel's small garage. Neighbors came outside to watch. The CEO of one of the world's largest automotive technology companies stepped out. His name was Michael Carter. He looked around the tiny workshop filled with old tools and half-repaired cars. Then he smiled. So this is where everyone says miracles happen. Daniel shook his hand. No miracles. Just patience. Michael laughed. I like that answer. The CEO opened the back of one SUV. Inside was an advanced electric drivetrain worth millions of dollars. Our newest system has one problem. It passes every laboratory test. But after thousands of miles, it loses efficiency. We've spent 5 years trying to solve it. Daniel nodded. Let's take a look. He spent nearly 2 hours studying the system. He didn't rush. He didn't guess. Finally, he pointed to a tiny cooling passage inside the housing. It isn't blocked. It's too smooth. The engineers looked confused. Daniel continued. The coolant is flowing too quickly. It isn't staying inside long enough to remove heat efficiently. One engineer whispered. We never measured the flow time. We only measured the flow rate. Daniel smiled. That's the difference. The engineers modified the passage and repeated the test. The efficiency immediately increased beyond their target. The control room erupted in cheers. Michael Carter laughed. We've spent 5 years chasing software. You solved it by understanding physics. That afternoon, Michael held a press conference. Standing beside Daniel, he announced. Today we learned that true innovation doesn't depend on the size of your laboratory. It depends on the way you think. He then surprised everyone. Our company is donating $25 million to expand the Brooks Automotive Academy. Daniel looked stunned. That's far too much. Michael smiled. No. It's an investment. Not in buildings. In people. The audience stood and applauded. 1 year later, the Brooks Automotive Academy had grown into one of the country's most respected technical training centers. Students from every background came to learn. Many had been told they would never succeed. Daniel welcomed each new class with the same words. Don't chase complicated answers. Chase the truth. The simplest explanation is often the right one. Those words became the Academy's motto. Emma, now older, helped teach new students. She smiled as she watched her father walking through the workshop. Dad. Remember when everyone called you the junk mechanic? Daniel laughed. I do. Emma pointed toward a large sign above the entrance. It now read. Brooks Automotive Academy. Where curiosity builds the future. Daniel looked at the busy workshop filled with young mechanics solving real problems together. He smiled. They called me a junk mechanic. But they never understood something. Emma asked. What was that? Daniel picked up his old toolbox. The value of a mechanic isn't measured by the cars he works on. It's measured by the people he inspires. As the camera pulled away from the small garage that had started it all, hundreds of students continued learning, building, and believing in themselves. The little garage that people once laughed at had become a place of hope, proving that greatness can begin anywhere.